So on your Dharma lecture request sheet before you, Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Namo Sadanto Sucedoye Alahadi Samyao Samputoche.
Namo Sadanto Sucedoye Alahadi Samyao Samputoche.
无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。The unsurpassed, deep, profound, subtle, wonderful Dharma in 100,000 million eons is difficult to encounter. Now that I've come to receive and hold it within my sight and hearing, I vow to fathom the thus come one's true and actual meaning. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Berkeley Buddhist Monastery. Tonight is January 11th, 2014. We're in the new year. And we're here on a Saturday night lecturing on the Avatamsaka Sutra, also known, as you'll see on our title here, the Buddha's Flower Garland Sutra of Great Expansive Teachings, the Avatamsaka Sutra. And we're on the chapter in it called the 10 Grounds chapter. And so what I'd like to do is invite everybody to start off, is to invoke the name of the sutra and the assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. You could say who are the Dharma protecting assembly, the great assembly that comes and participates with the sutra. So it's on the front of your cover. We're going to recite the Chinese. Namo Da Fang Guang Fo Hua Yan Jing Hua Yan Nai Wei Fo Bu Sai. Namo Da Fang Guang Fo Hua Yan Jing Hua Yan Nai Wei Fo Bu Sai. Namo Da Fang Guang Fo Hua Yan Jing Hua Yan Nai Wei Fo Bu Sai. Namo Da Fang Guang Fo Hua Yan Jing Hua Yan Nai Wei Fo Bu Sai. Namo Da Fang Guang Fo Hua Yan Jing Hua Yan Nai Wei Fo Bu Sai. Namo Da Fang Guang Fo Hua Yan Jing Hua Yan Nai Wei Fo Bu Sai. Namo Da Fang Guang Fo Hua Yan Jing Hua Yan Nai Wei Fo Bu Sai. So, may I ask everybody to please open your sutra text to page. Page 44 and 45. You can open your sutra text. So we're on the section on the very last paragraph on page 44 and 45, starting with, on the Chinese side, 佛子, and on the English side, disciples of the Buddha. So what we do is a very traditional style of first reading the sutra text in both languages before we investigate it, just so we hear the sounds of the sutra. And so if you could say, repeat after me. I'll read a little bit of the Chinese, and then you can repeat the Chinese. Okay. 佛子菩萨摩诃萨如是清修行时，以布施教化众生，以爱语力行，同时教化众生，示现色身，教化众生，深言诸法，教化众生，开示菩萨恨，教化众生，先世如来大威力，教化众生，是生死过患，教化众生，生称如来智慧利益，教化众生。Okay, so next page, page 46. We'll finish this paragraph. 现大神通力，教化众生，以种种方便恨，教化众生。佛子，持菩萨摩诃萨，能如是轻方便，教化众生，心恒相续，是佛智慧，所作善根，无有退转，常心修学，殊胜恨法。Okay, so back to page 45. English. We could read the English together. Disciples of the Buddha, when the Bodhisattva Mahasattva is diligently cultivating in that way, he uses giving to teach and transform living beings. He uses kind words, beneficial actions, and similarity in deeds to teach and transform living beings. He manifests physical bodies to teach and transform living beings. He proclaims all dharmas to teach and transform living beings. He explains the conducts of a bodhisattva to teach and transform living beings. He displays the great awesome power of a thus come one to teach and transform living beings. He manifests calamities of birth and death to teach and transform living beings. He praises the benefits of the thus come one's wisdom to teach and transform living beings. He displays great powers of spiritual penetrations to teach and transform living beings. He uses all kinds of expedient practices to teach and transform living beings. Disciples of the Buddha, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, is able to be that diligent in expediently teaching and transforming living beings. His resolve constantly continues as he tends towards the Buddha's wisdom. In all the good routes he creates, there is no turning back. He always diligently practices and learns the Dharma of the most supreme practices. Okay. So tonight we are investigating the Avatamsaka Sutra, and for those who maybe it's their first time here, the Avatamsaka Sutra is a sutra spoken by the Buddha, and actually it's it's got many portions to it. Parts of it are actually spoken by bodhisattvas. This section is actually spoken by Vajra Treasury Bodhisattva. And this section of the sutra we are in is called the 10 Grounds chapter. So what I thought might be an interesting way to start out is just to give a little bit of the spirit of the Avatamsaka Sutra that for me at least inspires me. What I find in the Avatamsaka Sutra that it's a kind of like a bright light. It's kind of like a guiding star in this, you could say, Saha world, which is oftentimes a place where there's quite a bit of suffering that we can see around us. And being able to encounter and meet a text like this, which actually I would say puts goodness at its front, a kind of really wholesome brightness and good quality to it, is very inspiring, is very, you can say, encouraging, hopeful. And I thought in our discussions about the sutra in the evenings, Heng Sure and myself thought of, I think, one way to approach it, which is if we look at other texts that we have opportunities to be exposed to in our everyday lives, oftentimes we get the newspaper, or maybe, as most young people are now, mostly on the internet, and they see these newspaper headlines maybe run across the screen or something. And what's usually on those headlines? Maybe it's the wars that are being fought, or maybe it's the hunger that's being, poverty that's all around the world, children suffering, or it's environmental damage that's causing, a lot of climate problems, a lot of the natural disasters. I remember one clip I saw on plastic, which is all this plastic that we've been using, like, this kind of stuff, plastic bags. So what happens to this garbage? It actually goes into the ocean, and it gets into little fine particles, and it's made this huge continent in the middle of the ocean. And in this video, it shows the person goes and cuts open a stomach of a bird, and you see these shiny pieces of plastic, like red and pink and clear, and you just go, oh. I remember just feeling that. It's like, oh, it's, I'm part of that from the garbage that I create, and it's going out there. And so we're often exposed to this kinds of news. Sometimes there's a really wholesome news, something that really inspires us. We recently Nelson Mandela, passed away, and he lived a life that was, I think, very inspiring for many people. But by and large, oftentimes the news we meet has a lot of suffering, has a lot of, it's mostly there to catch our attention, to move our emotions, to read it, be interested, but doesn't move always our heart to the good. So what I find is that oftentimes in the world, just reading all the things happening, we kind of get wary. There's a kind of like a world weariness. Oftentimes our heart kind of hardens almost. It kind of dries out. Yeah, it dries out. And so what we thought the sutra can be kind of thought of as almost like moisturizing cream. And I actually don't have that much experience with moisturizing cream. I don't think Heng Sure has that much either. But he was telling me that he has, I guess, experience maybe selling it or finding out about it. And he was saying that there's these moisturizing cream that's really expensive, that's just this little tiny bit. You only use like a little tiny bit at a time, maybe like hundreds of dollars for a little tiny jar of it. And so this sutra is kind of like moisturizing cream. You read it, and it somehow softens that hardness, softens that almost a little bit cynical attitude that we develop sometimes in society, because all of a sudden you see the great heart of the Bodhisattva and the Buddhas, and the kindness and just not just that, it's just this is the path that we can ourselves walk on, that all living beings will walk on. This is not far away from us at all. This is our fundamental nature. And something like that takes away that hardness and keeps us flexible and supple, rather than hardening and getting tough. It actually softens us. And if you can imagine, I think that's what allows us to learn the Dharma, to stay young, to stay always learning. So this is what I think the sutra allows for us. Yeah.
Right. Not just the hardening, but also when I picked the monastery gets a copy of the New York Times, and I happened to be reading one of the editions the other day, And just looking, there was a report about malnutrition kids in Afghanistan and about the strife in the Central African Republic, CAR, and some stories about people using drugs. And you just feel this sense of hopelessness. Like there's a lot of things going on in the world, and there's not much that I can do to make a difference. So that's where a text like this comes in. My apologies for interrupting.
So here we're reading the 10 grounds chapter, which is 10 stages of the Bodhisattva's cultivation. It's actually a later series, a later list of stages in a 50-some stages of Bodhisattva practice. And so we're on the 5th ground, which is called the ground of difficult conquest. And so just to give a little bit of context, when I was looking over the sutra, what has happened before, if you look back on page, let's see here, page 40 or 39, he actually sees the world, he sees living beings are suffering. He actually sees living beings it's a little bit tough on living beings, as they're foolish, common people who are, you can say, deluded and lack wisdom and deeply pitiful. So he sees us living beings. We're always fighting with each other, we're always arguing with each other, we're always doing things that cause ourselves more suffering and the people we love and care about even more suffering. Much less to say the people we don't like, we cause them suffering as well. And so the Bodhisattva sees all this. And what does he do? He didn't say, oh my goodness, these living beings are really suffering. Good thing I'm not them. I want to get out of here. No, he says, I'm going to make a resolve to save them. I'm going to help them out. And so he makes a resolve. So that's on page 41. He makes this resolve saying, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to rely on anybody else. I make it my personal responsibility to do it. And then the sutra text is very interesting because it takes us directly into the heart and the mind of the Bodhisattva. And people know that Buddhism really emphasizes intention. Our intentionality is really important. So here the Bodhisattva's intention is completely pure. Why does he do this? Why does he make this resolve? And it describes the reason why on page 43. It's essentially for the sake of living beings. He's not doing it for any selfish motivation. It's not like sometimes, when I try to do something good and I sometimes mix it with a little bit of selfishness, but it's, 50% helpful. It's kind of like this mixture of motivations. The Bodhisattva is going at this completely pure intentions. And so after he makes that resolve with these pure intentions, the next section is actually very interesting. It took Jing Sure a while to think about how does this connect to the next stage, because the Bodhisattva has a number of names. He is called this, he is called this. If people remember, we just went over that list and we finished that last week. And so one of the ideas, actually, Jing Sure at the last moment thought, oh wait, he actually has mastered all these practices and people actually call him this. So if you look at it, so he's resolved to cultivate. He's now motivated in the right way. And now he's actually cultivated himself to the point where he's a master of it, and people recognize him as a master in these things. For instance, he is called one, just to pick one, he is one who is awakened because he is able to contemplate what holds true and what does not hold true. So people basically recognize him. And that makes a lot of sense. If you think about the process of teaching other people, is that first you have to be good at yourself, and they have to be able to recognize you as being good at that before they'll start listening to you, right? I think that makes sense. If you were just somebody who didn't really have much to say about it, who didn't embody that yourself, then whatever said doesn't connect to the living being. So the Bodhisattva here embodies what he's trying to teach. And so people now call him these things. So this moves us to the sutra text that we're on today that we just read, which is on you can say the 4 gathering in dharmas. It's the 4, I think the Chinese is 四受法, which the Bodhisattva uses we literally translate as gather in living beings, to create an affinity to living beings so that they will want to learn the Dharma. And I think this is a very important principle for all of us to pay attention to, because I think Buddhism, it talks about, helping others learn the Dharma because it's a way for them to become free of suffering. Buddhism, however, is not really interested in going out and converting a lot of people. You don't see the monks out on the street saying, become Buddhist, or else, da 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 da. There's no force behind it. You're not forcing people to be. It has to come from some living being's own heart, own aspirations to cultivate, to become good, to learn wisdom. And so what the Bodhisattva does, it doesn't say he goes out and teaches the Dharma and forces the living beings to learn the Dharma. Like last week we mentioned the mom coming to the temple and forcing the young boy, her son, to bow to the monks, bow, bow. That's not the way to do it. Rather, he cultivates these 4 gathering in dharmas. And these are ways that basically creates an affinity with the living beings so that they will want to listen. They will develop the sense of trust with the Bodhisattva. Another way to think about it, that takes it maybe away from the Dharma, but just more day-to-day life, if there are young kids in this audience, which I don't see too many, but I think for young kids, oftentimes the question is, who will be my friend? Well, I will say this is another way that how you find friends. These are good things to cultivate if you want to create friendships around. And so that's what we have tonight. What we're going to investigate tonight is the 4 gathering in dharmas. And just as a final note, one feedback we had was that thought, well, for these sutra lectures, it'd be very valuable for the audience to have a chance to learn something. As in, how do you say it? How to come away with something. And I thought to myself, well, in my over the years learning the sutras, what's really valuable? And my sense is actually, if we are able to remember these lists of the Dharma, not just hear it in one ear and then go, oh yeah, that was really interesting for that night, but actually try to memorize it. And then when we see something happen in the world, we can connect it to that list. It actually, these lists are almost like medicine. They're like the Tylenol pill that you take for a headache. So you remember them, and then they become yours. So I just want to maybe encourage or exhort people in this night, just 4 things. If you can memorize these 4 gathering in dharmas, we can test everybody at the end to see who remembers, but just these 4. Not looking at the text, if you can still repeat it in your mind, what are these 4 things that gather in living beings? So that's just introduction. But the first one, which is he uses giving, Heng Sure will speak about it.
I see that Ko Hong is here this evening, so if there's anyone here who would rather listen to the lecture in Vietnamese, you can go upstairs and there'll be a simultaneous translation of what's going on into Vietnamese, if there's anyone who's interested. So Ko Hong is upstairs. If you go up, they'll give you a headset that you can wear, and then you can hear in Vietnamese. So for all of you, like Jin Chuan Shu, my fellow Dharma brother, my Dharma monk, just said, if you want to make friends, if you want to be popular, this is the list that the Buddha gave. So this is a list of 4 items, right? So if you look at the sutras or the Buddha's teachings, it's full of lists. There's always 3s of this, 4s of this, 6 of this, 10s of this. The lists are never endless. And as Jin Chuan Shu said, the list is like a recipe. It's a medicine to cure a sickness. It's a solution to a problem. So if you're a carpenter, there are your plans. You follow the plans, and then you end up with something that the plans are designed for. If you're a cook, you follow a recipe, and you end up with what the recipe intends for. So this list they call it the 4 kinds of gathering in living beings. In other words, how to get people to like you. And the Bodhisattva doesn't do this because the Bodhisattva wants to be popular. The Bodhisattva does this in order to create positive affinities with people, so that in the future, hopefully there will come a time when you need help. And then the Bodhisattva will have the ability, because he already has this positive affinity with you. So you're more prone to listen to him. So that gives him the opportunity then to help you. because we can only help ourselves. We have the Buddha Dharma in order to guide us, but transformation or change comes from within. So this lists the 4 kinds of gathering people in. The first is giving. Okay, if you want to take notes, this is the only note you need to take for this evening. Giving, okay, kind words, beneficial actions, and similarity in deeds. And we'll go into each of these in detail. And then the rest of the paragraph is a description of how these 4 kinds of gathering people in can be applied. And if we have time today, we'll turn to page 47. The next paragraph, to the end of page 47 and a bit of page 49, this comes as a set. The last part of page 47 actually describes in more detail what we're going to cover in the 4 ways of gathering living beings in. Okay? So one way to understand these 4 methods of gathering living beings in is not to put ourselves in the shoes of the Bodhisattva, but to put ourselves on the receiving end and try to dig into our memory banks or use our imagination and imagine ourselves when we are, say, on the receiving end of someone giving us something, or someone giving us kind words, beneficial actions, or someone who is similar in nature to us telling us something. And then that will help us define why the Buddha uses why the Bodhisattva uses these 4 kinds of gathering ins. So the first one is giving. Okay, so giving is itself by a list in Buddhism. There are 3 kinds of giving: giving of wealth, giving of dharma, and giving of courage. Giving of wealth, dharma, and courage. So what's giving of wealth? This is also called giving that sustains life. So what are the things that we can give that sustains life? They divide this into 2 categories. One is inner wealth and outer wealth. Outer wealth is really simple to explain. It means the things that you own, the things that you have, possessions that you have that you can give away. It could be money. Money is one. It could be jewelry. It could be blankets. Anything that you possess that you give away to someone who needs it. That's a giving of outer wealth. What's inner wealth? Our bodies. Within us. Things that are part of us. So in the sutras, you will find amazing stories about how bodhisattvas who are selfless and they're able to give parts of their body away. In day-to-day life, you see that in people who, in blood donation. If you go to the hospital every 3 months to donate blood, because you know that there are people who need blood when they need to go for an operation. Or sometimes friends tell you, hey, one of my friends is going to have to go, needs an operation. What kind of blood are you? Can you help in donating blood? That's an example of giving of inner wealth.
Can I know one story?
Yeah.
I thought, actually, there's a story of Shakyamuni Buddha giving his body for living beings. And I think there's many stories of this. But one story was actually, we've heard the story about him feeding himself to the hungry tigress. I think people heard that story. But there's another story which was very inspiring to me that I heard recently at the Buddha's repentance. I think it was last year. It is actually the Buddha was an elephant. And what happened was these travelers, these human beings were basically famished. They were hungry, they were out of water, they were, basically starving, about to die. And so they met this elephant, and the elephant says, oh, don't worry. I know of another place that's at the end of the cliff over on the other side. An elephant there has died, and there'll be plenty of food for all of you to survive and eat, and then get you where you need to go. And so later, they traveled over there, and what did they find? They found that elephant dead at the bottom of the cliff. And it was like that elephant, I forgot what the name of the elephant was, but that elephant actually jumped off the cliff and sacrificed himself so that those travelers would have food to eat and things to drink for them to continue on their journey. And so, I mean, that's the kind of extreme self-sacrifice sometimes portrayed in the Buddha's life stories. That's very inspiring. It's like, wow, somebody or an animal or a living being is practicing generosity and giving in such a selfless way. Of course, that's beyond most of what we conceive of giving, but if we actually saw that in action, I think we would be very moved as well.
Okay, so that's a really great example of giving inner wealth. Selfless giving. Giving has to be selfless. In all these four kinds of gathering in living beings, it only works if you give unconditionally. It means you don't have any conditions to the giving. And because people can tell, as we'll go on, people can tell if you're genuine or not in your giving.
Can I throw another example?
Yes.
So just recently in the monastery, a young man came to me, and he's really excited. He's new to Buddhism, a little bit, I think. And he's really excited about Buddhism, kind of wants to spread the Dharma. He says, oh yeah, so I go out and I help feed people, and then I give him a Buddhist book to read. I say, get some food and I'll give you this book to read. And I'm like, well, in Buddhism, we don't really try that method. And I think the principle is because when we give, we want to give unconditionally. For sure, the Bodhisattva hopes that they will learn the Dharma because it gets them out of suffering. But the idea isn't to kind of force the Dharma on the people. It's kind of like, I've been helping you out, and someday, that living being themselves will have this heart to want to cultivate the Dharma. And so, this young man said, oh, then what do? I want to spread the Dharma. I says, well, what we do is we cultivate ourselves. And if we can embody the teachings, like I said in the sutra here, the Bodhisattva embodies the teachings, the people recognize his good qualities, and then they want to learn from him. So that's what we do. It's not to go out with, the Buddhist, canon, the Avatamsaka Sutra, and everybody walk across the street, we give them a copy or something. That's not the ideal way to go about it. Is if we can make these practices part of our daily lives and our hearts peaceful, people will naturally have an affinity. So anyways, I just want to throw that in.
Where was I? Okay, so giving. And we go next to, some people it's difficult, either physically or geographically, to give, say, inner wealth or even outer wealth. Like we are monks, we don't have anything to give away. We depend on people giving us things so that we can function. So what can we do? Next one is giving of Dharma. Giving of Dharma refers to explaining anything to do with the Dharma, say holding the precepts, the sutras, and what it's like to have samadhi or concentration, and why is that useful in our everyday lives. But the giving can also be unspoken, like the story of the young man and Jin Chuan Shi's advice to him. Instead of telling people or doing the bait and switch, let me give you a sandwich, but you have to read this book. So instead of the bait and switch method, if he practices by himself and he shows it in his demeanor, so what happens is you start leading by example. And that's how you really transform people, through your actions, because you need to transform yourself first. You can't really be a hypocrite, say one thing but you do some other thing and expect people to listen to you. So all the great people, if you ask around, or if you look at yourself, last week we talked about respect. So a lot of people who are respected are the ones who, how would you say, they talk the talk and they walk the walk. That means they're not hypocrites. They do what they say, and they don't expect people to follow them. They just set an example, and if you want to follow them, it's fine. And the third kind of giving, so we have three kinds of giving: giving of wealth, which is inner and outer; giving of Dharma, which is giving of wisdom. Giving of Dharma can also mean that you help someone go through a difficult period. Say, when I was deliberating whether to take the 5 precepts, I met some friends who had taken the 5 precepts before, who were in the same position as me, and they gave me very good advice that I could rely on. So that could also be giving of Dharma. And the last form of giving is giving of courage. What does this mean, giving of courage? Can you make someone brave? Yes, of course you can. Say it says here, when someone experiences a catastrophe or has a frightening experience. Has anyone ever had a car breakdown? Or know of someone who had a car breakdown and you're stranded? First thing you do, you reach for your phone. If this happened like recently in the last maybe 15, 20 years, and you had a mobile phone, you reach for your phone and you punch in numbers. First people come to your mind and you call them, hoping that someone will say, "Where are you? I'll be there right away to save you." That's giving of courage. You may be going through a difficult time. Many doctors. Do you have any doctors in the house? Any doctors? No? Okay. Well, a skillful doctor, if he's trying to tell you something serious, would know how to put it in a way that gives you hope instead of in a very unskillful manner, saying you only have this amount of time to live, or you have to do this, you have to do that. Giving of courage also is a way of how we phrase what we say. And it also shows our intentions when we speak to people. If you have ill will against someone and you speak to them, they pick it up because it shows in your face, in the words that you say, in the words that you choose, and in how you say it, your body language. But if you care for someone, or it automatically comes across in the way you speak to the person. So sometimes before we speak to someone, or when we are giving advice, people don't really listen to us. There might be a few reasons, and one of them is our heart, our intention in trying to come across to them. How do we want to help them? So there are many ways of giving of courage, skillful, unskillful, so we have a choice. So the next time there's an opportunity to give, if you remember these three kinds of giving, you can choose which one you can use, or use all three. That would be great. And the story?
Yeah, another story. And although I have to say my memory isn't so good because it's been a long time since I really watched movies that much. But how many people watch the movie Sound of Music? Okay, let's see that. Okay, so I think people remember. I think there's a scene where all these kids ran to the bed. That was the start of the song. These are my favorite things, something like that. I think that's a very good example of giving courage. You know, that the kid's scared because of maybe it's lightning or something happening, and so she says, "Well, you know, at this time, think of your favorite things, and it'll get you through it." You know, so I won't sing the song for you, so I won't hurt your ears because I don't remember that much, but I know kind of pieces here and there. But I think that's a reference point. Maybe people can remember. Oh yeah, we can see somebody giving courage.
You can also give courage by yes, Alan. I think you should use the mic. Yes.
Yeah, use the mic.
Here, because we have lots of devotee Buddhists here listening to the sutra. So when you try to share a book to your friends, your classmates, your coworkers, you have to read that book from the first page to the last page. You never want to share a book, but you haven't really read it. So that won't be a good, wise action. Because if that person read a book, they have some questions they want to ask you, they want to share their thought to you. You say, well, you know what, I haven't read that. They say, oh, what's going on? So, and you want to really make sure the content right in the book is really kind of according to the dharmas. So it's really important to read a book before you pass on to someone else. So that's a very important thing.
Okay. Good point.
So you have to read a book. You have to understand the book before you pass it to a friend. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Are you speaking? Are you speaking from experience? Okay. So if anyone has something to share or you have a question, please raise up your hand at any time. Don't be shy. This is interactive, or we would like it to be interactive at least. Because we have people listening online, when you raise up your hand, we'll get you a microphone so that the people online can hear what's going on at the same time. So we went through the first kind of 4 kinds of gathering in. The first kind was giving. Okay. So remember, you want to make friends, give kind words, give advice, or you can give inner or outer wealth. be generous. The second kind of gathering living beings in is kind words. All right, kind words. So imagine yourself on the receiving end of a kind word. What's a kind word? It could be a compliment. It could be someone noticing something different in you. If you had a new haircut and your colleague or your friend says, "Hey, you look different today, you look nice. Do you just have a haircut? It makes you look really good." Whoa, it really fills you up. There's a certain energy, a chi that comes just with that kind of compliment. And guess what? It's free. It's really easy to pay someone, but it has to be genuine. It's really easy to pay someone a genuine compliment, and you can see the change in a person right away. Yeah. But don't use that to then, can I borrow $10 from you? No. It has to be, remember, it has to be unconditional, okay? No strings attached. Yeah. It also means that when you pay someone, you give kind words to someone may be in trouble and you try to console the person. Why it works is also, it shows that you're paying attention to someone. Because if not, you wouldn't take the trouble to behave that way. And on the flip side of giving kind words, but has the same effect, is also listening. So you could see, sometimes people just want someone to listen to them. They just want to air their views, or they have some inner frustration or that they want to get out. It may not necessarily be logical, because it's usually emotional, and they just want someone to listen to them. And how you behave, how you react to that makes all the difference in the world. If you want to listen to the person, but every 2 minutes or 10 seconds you're looking at your watch, or you're looking around, and you're not paying giving the person due respect, you're doing more harm than good. But if you genuinely, in your heart, you want to help the person out, and just by listening, you may not be able to do anything, but you could just listen, and you could look the person in the eyes and just nod, even if you don't understand what's going on, and just nod and smile, and maybe just repeat a few words to show that you're listening. So you don't necessarily have to give kind words. You can be on the receiving end of words, but just lend people your time to show that you care. And that can make a lot of difference in a person's lives. And what's the opposite of kind words? Harsh words. One of our Dharma brothers recollected this story before. He had a friend who was undergoing a very tough time, and one of the ways that in the dialect, one of the ways of speaking would be there's a term that says, "Why don't you just go and die?" And he said it to his friend, but he didn't mean it, of course. And it's a term that's used quite often. But what happened was the friend, the next time he saw his friend, the friend had committed suicide, and his friend was in a coffin. And you can imagine how he felt. Now he's quite sure that the friend didn't commit suicide just because he told his friend that there were a lot of other things. But can you imagine the stain that has on your heart? It's like a stain, like a red wine stain on your favorite dress or shirt that you cannot wash out. And you take that with you for a very long time. So sometimes the consequences of using the opposite of a kind word is really strong. So before we say something, even in jest, it's best that we always have people's best intentions in our heart, and then just think before we say something. Jerry, you have something to add? I see you holding the mic.
I have a question. So what's the difference between kind words and flattering? Flattering.
Flattery? Flattery is not sincere. Flattery is like, oh, Jin Chuan Sure, when you shave your head, it's really shiny, it's nice. It's not sincere. I do it because I just want to make him feel good. But if I say that, oh, Jin Chuan Sure, ever since you shave your head, you really look like a monk. I think it's a look that really suits you. You kind of, without going overboard, it's the intention, basically. I think your intention sets the difference between what is flattery and what is kind words. Yeah. Sometimes, if you're not really skillful in doing it, people may view what you say with some kind of suspicion. But as long as your heart is sincere, yeah.
It takes time. I think being able to speak kindly to living beings and not move into other ways of speaking is sometimes difficult, because we're used to speaking in a bit of a selfish way, looking out for ourselves. And people, I think, are often a little bit suspicious as well. They're kind of cynical about human beings being kind of selfish. And so if they hear prayers, they might be thinking, well, what's in it for them? And so in our hearts, I think the aspect is a purification. And that's why we have so much cultivation around our hearts and our minds to remove the greed, remove the hatred, remove the delusion, so that when we do speak, we're actually speaking in a kind way. And that we do it in a way that connects to the living being. So sometimes, even if we have the intention and we say something, like for instance, Jing Husher never tells me my head is shiny and I look like a monk. So if you were to say that, I would actually feel a little bit like, what's going on? And it would feel a little bit like flattery, although he might want to use it with kindness, right? But that might not be skillful, because I would interpret it as something strange. But you can get the point, though. It's not, I mean, if you look at husband and wives or families or friends, kind words is something that we see all the time. It's something, and this is why the Bodhisattva uses it, because it's something that it makes somebody's heart go, oh, okay, this person cares about me. This person cares about me. And so parents, if you can master that with kids, your kids, rather than say, okay, you come home, have you done your homework yet? No, Mom. If you actually say, well, how was your day today? Or when they're sad, you can encourage them. There's a kindness that develops, and people feel that, and then they will, when they say something, I want to listen to them, because when I listen to them, I know they're kind. They have my best interest at heart. So I think we all know certain people we go to for advice or for guidance, because we know that they speak to us kindly. They speak with this kindness in their heart. If we don't have somebody like that, my hope is that people can find somebody like that over time. You have the Guanyin Bodhisattvas as an example of that, but in our own hearts we can go and look. Okay. Which go next one? Okay.
No, I have a story. I used to, when I was working, and I like to eat a lot, so I was kind of overweight. And I had this college friend who we would meet up, say maybe once every 3 or 4 months. And he's known for being a joker. He likes to make jokes. And every time he saw me, he would say, "Oh, you're looking really prosperous." And if you're Asian, you would know what that means. What that means, because prosperous means you're well filled. You're around. You get all the food that you have. And it's not a flattering thing to say. So that's flattery. Yeah, although it's not flattering. You say, "Oh, you're looking very prosperous."
Okay. So the next one we have on the list is beneficial actions, is doing good on behalf of others. So we had giving before, which is actually literally giving. So there's definitely some overlap. There's not like these are categories that are fixed like this, one side and the other side. But this is actually doing things with our body, mouth, and mind for the benefit of others. And I think I can think of 2 examples or 2 groups that talk about this. One, I think people know of Charity Focus, which I think has recently been renamed to Service Space, started by Nipun Mehta who I believe started the group actually in Berkeley Monastery a long time ago. They met here, and then they spiraled out to be a lot. And for him, he's actually a very inspiring man as well. He's done a lot of good deeds, and he's devoted himself basically to do good for other people. And so his whole, like for instance, one kind of project that they did was they created little smile cards, which is basically when you do something good for somebody else, you leave a smile card on the table or for the person, and it says basically, you've been maybe touched with a random act of kindness, pass it forward, something like that on the text. And it came because what he found was all these college kids. I don't know if MIT was the actual one, but I know MIT has these crazy prank stories where for instance, they actually got a police car on the roof of one of their school buildings, their main school building, had a police car.
Just to put things in the context, he's from Stanford, so.
so these kids are going to so much time trying to do pranks to pull on people. And so he was going over with his friends or his member, I think maybe it was his nephew. You guys spent all this time making these pranks, and in the end, what happens? Well, you kind of make fun of somebody at the end. At the end is kind of like, oh, somebody kind of made fun. He says, what if you made all that energy and you did something good? And they're like, oh, we never thought. So basically, think really hard, and you think of something really good, and then you leave the smile card. So that was the project that they did, and that actually was quite interesting, the effect that it had. So that the young people then think, okay, so what do I do that I can do to really help this person out? And then at the end of it, they leave this card. And the idea is be anonymous. That's not coming back to them. But the idea is you receive a piece of kindness, well, we just pass it forward. You give it to somebody else as well. And that's what allows the kindness to continue on. So his group is very amazing because it pretty much runs on no budget. Everybody's volunteers. At one point, and I think it's probably still the case, basically he would devote his life to doing this work. And then at some point he would get a job, make some money to just live and get enough money to live, and then go back to doing work and serving other people. He really made it his dharma. And people would offer to him, and say, we'll support you to do this work. He said, no. I want to do this completely without any, I just want to be able to do it. So he would just constantly do that for quite a while. And I think he's still on it. I haven't talked to him for a while about it, so I don't know what his current condition is. But yeah, that was definitely a very inspiring group. Yeah.
So I just noticed as Jin Chuan Shu is speaking about this smile card, I can't really show it to you. It's not convenient, but there's a smile card that's attached to the back of this picture frame. So what happens with a card is this. You might go to a Starbucks, and when it's your turn, you see a card on a counter, and the person servicing you says, oh, the person who was just in front of you just paid for a coffee for you, it's complimentary. And then she hands you the card. So the card says, smile, you just been tagged. And it says, experiments in anonymous kindness is the name of the game, and now you're it. And then you'll be like, what's this? And then you flip the card behind, and it says, someone reached out to you with an anonymous act of kindness. Now is your chance to do the same. Do something nice for someone. Leave this card behind and keep the spirit going. So you could be, say, at a fast food restaurant. You could be at a movie or something. And you notice someone behind you who looks like they might just need something to brighten up their day. And you could do a random act of kindness. And to tie in with the giving of like kind words, you could do kind actions. Does everyone here drive? Who doesn't drive? Put up their hands. Does not drive? 1. 2. Okay. I used to drive, and I drove in Malaysia. Malaysia, some of the drivers are really aggressive, and I used to be one of them. It was a long time ago. And one day, someone cut in front of me, and my first reaction was to honk, and my face was full of ill will. Ill will. And the person raised up his hand in a gesture of sorry. And immediately I cooled down. And I realized how powerful a simple gesture could be. So from then on, whenever I did anything stupid on the road, I made it a point to bring up my hand to say I'm sorry. Yeah, and well, it worked for me when someone did it to me. So I just hope that it worked for the person behind me whenever I turn without putting on my signals or something.
So the other group, which I don't know, I realized we're actually going pretty slowly, so I won't go into detail. But the other group, I thought it was Boy Scouts, and they have this. If anybody was in Boy Scouts, I don't know if people know the slogan of Boy Scouts. Oh yeah, what's the slogan? Yeah, get the mic. Get them. Oh, I'll repeat it. Do a good turn daily is the slogan for. And do you remember? Do you know how they represent it? No. Somebody knows? The mic? Oh, no, you don't. Okay. I think it's a coin. It's a coin. It basically, what you're supposed to do is you have it in one pocket, and then when you do a good turn for your day, you move it into your other pocket. So that's what you do as the action. And so you're supposed to do at least one good deed a day, without any attachment, without any conditions, and just do something. And actually, it's if you have that in your heart to do, it's very helpful. It makes you very happy because you're looking out for things to do. Oh, I can help out that person. Okay, and just do something good for somebody. I remember that being a very happy project to do for each day. Okay, so the next one we have is similarity in deeds. It says in Chinese it's 同事. I apologize for my American-born Chinese accent for Chinese. My tones aren't so good, but it's 同事, and it's basically not just similarity in deeds. It's almost like do the same work. You work together. You're like fellow. You're like good friends with the person. So you're somebody that draws near. How example would be good? Oh, for instance, like for monks, it'd be a fellow monk. We're together all the time. Or if you're a what would be a not carpet. I'm just thinking of what jobs. If you're working as an engineer in a company, it might be a fellow engineer who's working with you. If you're a student in school, it's a fellow student in school. And the Bodhisattva basically appears to teach people by doing the same work. Because oftentimes who we learn from most are the peers that we're around, the friends we're around. Oftentimes we go to them for advice first, rather than say the great teacher. We've oftentimes maybe had a difficult approach, but our good friend, we go, what do you think about this? Is that right or wrong? Yeah, I'm not sure. Okay, let me figure it out. I always say that if you, actually one of the reflections I have for parents was, when kids kind of reach puberty, there's a kind of a switch. So especially, I tell this to second generation Asian parents because they don't quite get it sometimes in America, that we don't learn filiality or like family values in the same ways you learn in Asia. And so a lot of them kind of expect this will naturally happen through kids growing up in the West, which doesn't happen at all. They learn almost like the opposite. And so basically, I'll say there's a turning point there, that before that age hits, you have basically a window to speak to the young child where they actually want to listen to you. They actually really want to draw near their parents and pay attention. But after that mark, so if you don't take that opportunity at that time before, afterwards, I'm sorry, it's going to be really hard. Because...
it happens when your son or daughter stops holding your hand. They don't want to hold your hand in front of their friends.
Yeah, it's the value in American society growing up is often you want to be your own person. You kind of want to be rebellious. So almost what your parents tell you, you want to do the opposite. So Western parents actually almost all understand this. For the Asian parents, I found, for the first generation who came over, this is a little bit of a new phenomenon that they encounter with their ABC kids, like myself and my friends. And so what I tell them is important is that age is before to establish that relationship, so you can use that when the kid's growing up throughout his life. Otherwise, it's really hard to establish that after. If you spent all your time thinking that I'll make money to support the kid, and then they'll be grateful to me, I'm sorry, that doesn't work. That doesn't work for American kids. They actually get resentful. They get, the parent doesn't have time for me because they're always out making money. And so after that, though, what's the major influence? Is this. It's similarity in, it's not similarity, it's called 同事, which is friends. So we look to our peers. So I'll say for between 12 and usually maybe 30 or somewhere around there where we have another, I would say, a step in maturity when we actually have to make our own lives work. We go out into the world. Then there's almost a return back to the parents to say, okay, maybe I want to learn because we're meeting the same difficulties that we've had in life as what we see our parents go through. So if the establishment relationship was strong before, there's a chance to return to something. But in between that time, the way that somebody, especially young, learns is through is friends. And for many of us throughout our lives, it's still friends. So this is why the Bodhisattva uses that particularly. I think is a very important method.
Okay, so we just gone through the list of 4 things on how to be popular and make friends. So if there's any budding authors here, you can write a self-help book, how to make friends by the Buddha. Okay, so the next sentence, he manifests physical bodies to teach and transform living beings. From here onwards is how the Bodhisattva puts in action these 4 kinds of gathering ins. All right? So the first one that's described, he manifests physical bodies. Another way to say this is he has transformation bodies. In the sutras, there's a lot of descriptions about how the bodhisattvas is able to transform themselves into physical beings that is most appropriate to help a certain person at that particular time. So in the Universal Door chapter that describes Guanyin Bodhisattva, for example, if the situation calls for her or him to appear as a monk, he or she will do so. If it has to appear in the form of a normal person, a lay person, she will do that. What the other?
Like a god,
like
of the various
god.
gods in different heavens,
If you're
or
god,
a bodhisattva. Yeah.
If I'm a monk, if I'm a monk, I'm more comfortable getting advice, say, from a fellow monk, and then she would appear as a monk so that I'm more prone. So she understands what you need, and then she does that. So there are many stories about how bodhisattvas manifest physical bodies, and somehow or other my memory just became blank. Yes, a fish. Has anyone seen a statue of Guanyin Bodhisattva holding a basket of fish? Has anyone seen it? If you Google it, you'll find many really nice images, some of which has been auctioned by Christie's for like $8,000. And there are a lot of stories connected to that, but one of the most amazing ones, and this is a true story, which is why the statue exists, is there was a village of fishermen, right? And Guanyin saw that it was time for them to learn the Dharma. So what happened was she appeared as a really beautiful girl in the village selling fish. Okay, this story doesn't have anything. The stories that I've heard about this, all the versions, did not have anything to do with how the other women in the village felt about her. Just only the man. Okay, because what happened was when this beautiful girl appeared selling fish, all the men wanted to buy fish from her. Okay, and all the men wanted her to be his wife. So she told all the men, she said, well, there's so many of you, there were about 110, 112 young men in the village, just at the right time to find a wife. So I can't marry all of you. What am I going to do? The older men, what are you going to do? So she said, okay, I have an idea. If all of you can memorize the Universal Door chapter in 5 days or something, she can have 5 days. If you can memorize, I'll marry you. Okay, so all the men, they got a copy of the Universal Door chapter, which we have at the monastery, if anyone's willing to marry a fish-selling lady. So they all memorize it. About 50 of them memorize it within 5 days, and they came back to her, all thinking that they had a chance now, right? So they went to her, and they all recited in front of her. And as you know, each and everyone recited, everyone was like thinking the same thing, what am I going to do? Everyone knows the same. She said, well, there's so many of you, I can't marry all of you. I said, I know. All of you needs to memorize the Heart Sutra. Oh no, the Vajra Sutra. Vajra Sutra is a pretty long sutra. And if you can memorize it within 10 days, I'll marry the guy who memorizes it. So everyone, all the men in the village, ran back, copy out the Vajra Sutra. And about, 15, 20? Quite a few of them actually memorized the Vajra Sutra. And it's...
You can see what really motivates guys.
Yeah, the power of beauty, okay? Okay, this is how men get manipulated, men. And then all of them, all 10 or 12 of them managed to memorize the sutra. They recited in front of her and she said, well, there's still too many of you. What am I going to do? She said, okay, if any of you can memorize the Lotus Sutra in the next 5 days, I'll marry you. Okay? All 10, 12 went back. And actually one of them did manage to memorize the Lotus Sutra. Okay? So they got married. And I think he was the son of the richest family in the village. So that is a huge banquet, right? And on the wedding night itself, guess what happened? This is Kuan Yin Bodhisattva. What? She died, yes. This actually is, if you look down at the second last line of our text today, he manifests calamities of birth and death, right? So, this Bodhisattva manifested the calamity of birth and death, which is what? Birth and death, birth, old age, sickness, and death. So she manifested the calamity of birth and death. And so this young man was so distraught. I mean, after all this hard work on memorizing all these texts, and if you look at the Vajra Sutra, it's huge, and the Lotus Sutra is about this thick, and it's no mean feat to memorize it. So he was really, really sad. So the wedding celebration turned into a funeral. So they put her in a coffin, and as everyone was grieving, along came an old monk. And the old monk asked them, what are you grieving for? And they told him the story, and he said, no one died. I said, yeah, she died. My wife died. No, she didn't die. She was Guan Yin Bodhisattva. If you don't believe me, go open up the coffin. They opened up the coffin, they didn't find anything, except maybe a shoe. Was it a shoe?
No, I think they find anything.
They find anything? The Bodhidharma shoe? Okay, I get a bit confused. Or they found a necklace, something like that. Different versions. Yeah, or a fish basket or something. And then the young man had an awakening. And he realized that how short life can be. So he took that teaching with him. He became a monk. And apparently, he before he died, he became an arhat.
He also had all those sutras memorized, so those came in good stead.
He also had the sutras memorized. And a lot more wonderful stories like this. For example, when Elder Master Suyin was doing his 3 steps, 1 bow, and that's in really recent history, he was bowing through the snow and he almost died because he didn't have anything to eat. And then he encountered this beggar that was famous on the mountain, and this beggar took him in, cooked him porridge, and recovered, and he was able to continue on his journey. And later he couldn't find the beggar, and he asked around, and people told him, oh, the beggar, that's a transformation body of Manjushri Bodhisattva. So there are many, many stories like this. Yeah.
Just to add something for that one, I don't know if people will believe it, but at least for myself, I find a very useful contemplation is actually all the people around us. Who knows? They could be a bodhisattva transformation. So if you have that reflection, then you really can't get upset with anybody, because you never know. That could be a bodhisattva transformation, and the transformations of the bodhisattvas aren't always the most. They transform in a way to teach you. So they could be somebody that could be trying to be a little bit critical of you, but gets you just enough to wake up. So if you have that contemplation, then everything everybody does is actually a teaching for you. So I think it's a good contemplation. Okay, the next one we have is he proclaims all dharmas. So I think here the dharmas being lowercase is probably uppercase. Maybe the people who speak Chinese can confirm. Probably Zufa here is the Buddha Dharma. He proclaims all dharmas, right? The teachings. He teaches the dharma to teach and transform living beings. And so I think maybe we won't go into that one. He basically teaches the dharma. We heard the story with the the fish basket Guanyin Bodhisattva story. She teaches the Dharma. So that's pretty straightforward. The next one is, he explains the conduct of a bodhisattva to teach and transform living beings. So this one is basically, he explains what does a bodhisattva do. I think we know the list of the 6 paramitas: giving, precepts, patience, vigor, samadhi or concentration, meditation, and then prajna, wisdom. So there's these often has the 6 paramitas and the myriad practices. And so that's something that is the conduct of the bodhisattva. So he explains that for living beings so that they go, oh yeah, those are practices. And
Which is exactly what all of us are doing right now.
yeah,
Learning the conducts of a bodhisattva.
yeah, we're literally reading. We had another fun story, but I see time is coming to an end. So maybe we'll save it for a future time.
We're saying time is coming to an end because at 9 o'clock we have a continuation of our 32 hallmarks presentation.
Yeah. So we're gonna have this because we promised last week we're gonna continue with the hallmarks to show the rest of the hallmarks. So, so the next one we have is, he displays the great, awesome power of a thus come one to teach and transform living beings. So basically, he's able to. I think people know the Buddha. Thus come one means the Buddha. And so the Buddha has great powers, and so he's able to manifest these powers to basically help living beings become inspired and cultivate. Often we try to use the word awe-inspiring rather than the word awesome, because awesome has become overused now. Almost everything's awesome. So now we use the awe-inspiring. You see some people go, wow, that's really great. So yeah. He manifests calamities of birth and death to teach and transform living beings. I think Jing Hoji just gave a very good example of that with the fish basket lady and fish basket Guanyin Bodhisattva. So there's a lot of stories as well where the Bodhisattvas come and teach by example, by going through some kind of suffering, some kind of difficulty. So it's just to teach a living being. So because you don't teach them by telling them something, you teach them by actually just showing it to them in front of them. So this is just many, many stories like that. So it's quite, if you read through the Buddhist canon, you'll find a lot of like that.
So one of the stories that I remember about this is linked to the story of Guanyin holding that fish basket. And in the Lotus Sutra, which he asked people to memorize, one of the chapters, the Buddha explains to people, he used this analogy. He said that I'm like a medicine healer. And what happens is, I go away on a trip, and when I'm away, I have maybe 20 children who start playing with my medicines, and they accidentally drink poison instead. So they take something which is not good for them. So poison here, you could say that it's deviant teaching, or teachings that do not lead you on the right path. That has. So he says when he comes back from his trip, he sees that all his children are rolling on the ground, they're in pain, they're suffering, they're in agony, which is the description of how we are in birth and death. You know, sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're sad. Most of the time, you know, we are either up and down every day. We want things that we can't get. We are near people we don't like, or people that we like are far away from us. So what happens is then he looks at them and says, okay, they need this kind of medicine. So he prepares a special medicine to cure their ills. So some of his sons or his children who has not really been affected by the poison recognize the medicine and say, oh, this medicine will cure me. And they take the medicine and they get better. So that's an analogy for saying that the medicine is the Buddha's teachings. And people of higher faculties who have a bit more wisdom, who can realize the usefulness of the Buddha's teachings, when they eat the medicine, they put the teachings into practice. And what happens is they gain liberation from birth and death. So they're no longer suffering. But there are a lot of people, for example, myself, who sees the teachings, either we recognize them as a good teaching or we don't. And if we do, we're not quite able to put it into practice to save ourselves. So what the medicine person then does is he thinks of a way that he can wake his children up. so that they will take the medicine. So he tells his children, I'm old now, I have to go on a trip and I may not come back. So he goes away on a trip, and then he sends a message telling his children, your father is now dead. He won't be coming back. And then the children, through their grief, say, who's going to save us now? Who can we look to? And then they realize that, oh, our father left us this medicine that we can take. So what happens is then they look to the teachings because they know the Buddha is no longer around. They can't rely on the Buddha anymore. So the Buddha who is the medicine healer. So they look to his teachings, which is the sutras, and then they consume the medicine, and then they get better themselves. So the Buddha basically manifested the calamity of birth and death in order to teach and transform living beings. So in the Lotus Sutra, there's this really nice verse that I'll read out. It's 16 sentences. The Buddha said, I too am like a father to the world. After he explained this story, this analogy that he used, he said, I too am like a father to the world, saving all from suffering and woe. But to living beings, inverted as they are, I speak of extinction, although I actually remain. Otherwise, because they often see me, they will grow arrogant and lax, unruly and attached to the 5 desires. They will tumble into the evil paths. I am ever aware of living beings, those who practice the way and those who do not. I speak various dharmas for their sakes, to save them in an appropriate manner. I am always thinking, how can I cause living beings to enter the unsurpassed path and to quickly perfect the Buddha body? So basically, in the Lotus Sutra, there's this example of the Buddha manifesting birth and death. So he manifests birth, old age, and then his sickness, and then his death, so to wake up living beings who need that kind of teaching. But he also says, in effect, he's always there trying to teach us. Yeah.
Okay, so the next one we have is, he praises the benefits of the thus come one's wisdom to teach and transform living beings. So people who know of the Avatamsaka Sutra's final chapter, which is Universal Worthies, Bodhisattvas, Practices and Vows chapter 40 of the Avatamsaka. In that one, the second practice of Universal Worthy is praising the thus come one, praising the Buddha. And I think, just to give a quick explanation of that, I think, okay. So is basically, my feeling is that it's really important, this kind of practice of praising, is because it actually diminishes the self. It's actually putting something else in front of us as better than us. We go, oh, that's something worth following. And not just for ourselves, but for other people. And it makes us not have to be number one. Oftentimes in society, in America, I remember watching this video in my economics class. Is America number one? And it gave all these things about. Basically, it was a free market capitalism kind of a video about how America is really free market capitalism is really good here, and maybe Hong Kong was close or something.
Number 1 in GMO.
Yeah, and so, anyways, but that's not the spirit of what the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas or what's happening here. Is that they're willing to praise the Buddhas. They're willing to praise other people. They're willing to praise something wholesome, because that will inspire others to follow. And so we heard Rev Heng Sure sing the song Praise the Buddha with Amazing Grace as its melody, right? It somehow lifts the heart. And we see it in a lot of other religions as well, in Christianity, in Islam. This is a very common practice in religion because it lifts the heart. It makes us want to go, oh wow, that's something worth following. That's what I want to study. And so, very much so, it's part of Buddhist practice. So, for those who just think Buddhism is just meditation, no, actually, there's a lot of other things in Buddhist practice as well. But praising is a Buddhist practice, praising the Buddha. So, okay.
I actually forgot to mention one thing regarding calamity of birth and death. Everyone probably has heard the famous analogy of the Buddha in front of all the monks. He reached down to the ground. As you'll see, in the next hallmark, the Buddha has long arms, okay? So he reached down on the ground and he grabbed a handful of dirt and he said, "O monks, what do I have in my hand?" He said, "Dirt." is there more dirt in my hand, or is there more dirt on the whole of the earth or the ground? I said, of course, oh Lord, there's more earth. There's more. The amount of earth that you hold in your hand cannot be compared to the amount of earth on the ground. So he said, so it is. He said, for those who have the ability to regain a human body after death is like the amount of earth or dirt I have in my fist. And the number of people who lose their human bodies after death is like the amount of dirt on the ground. So that's one of the ways to see calamities of birth and death. Because unless you have a high level of cultivation, you have no way to guarantee the outcome of your next reincarnation. And the Buddha wanted to stress the fact. There's also another analogy that he used to underscore the importance of cultivation. He said, imagine this huge sea, say the Atlantic Sea, and there's this turtle that comes off, a blind turtle that comes out for breath and goes back into the sea once every 100 years. Okay, there's this turtle in the whole sea. Every 100 years he comes out once for a breath and goes back. And it says, in that sea, there's this piece of wood that's floating that has a hole in the wood. So say every 100 years the turtle comes up for a breath and down. Say the chances of the turtle coming up for breath through that hole on that wood floating in the sea once every 100 years, that's the chances of us being reborn in a human body. So that was the analogy the Buddha wanted us to understand, that it's really, really difficult to be born as a human. So that if you are a human, which everyone here is, unless you are a bodhisattva in disguise, don't waste this opportunity. Try to practice one of the paramitas, or try to do something. Try to make people happy around you. Don't lose this opportunity. Take the 5 precepts, or do whatever you can. Yeah, read the sutras.
I'm not sure, but I believe that analogy with the turtle is the reborn after you lose the human body. So if you lose the human body, then to become reborn as a human again is that difficult. The time it takes to be that long. So how precious is this time now to cultivate? And the way that at least we can maintain the human body is if we maintain the 5 precepts. That's what the Buddhism says, is that's basically the Buddhist standard of being human. At least do this. This will let you be, stay human. So
that's why there's 2 of us. Check and balance.
But
so I believe it's 9.
Yeah.
And it's
well, I want to do one more thing. I want to do one thing, which is
story?
Just no. If people don't look at the sutra in their minds, because I want to see if people remember. Try to remember the 4 gathering in dharmas. Just as an exercise. Okay. So number 1, do people remember what it is? Okay. Giving.
Yes,
Okay,
giving.
Good. Number 2,
Kind
words. Number 3,
beneficial
number
acts.
4, similarity
Similarity
indeed,
deeds. That's
same
good.
work. Okay, great. Okay,
So try this out tomorrow, and
Yeah.
maybe you get some friends.
and see, and also is if you look around your life, daily life, and you see somebody do something like this, oh yeah, that's part of this list. It kind of makes the sutra come alive. You start seeing the worlds through the lens of the sutras, and that's really, I think, this school, the quote unquote teaching school in Buddhism, the Jiao Zhong, is that when you take the sutras and you bring it into your daily life, you use the categories that the sutras gives you to understand the world. That's the cultivation. And so that's one way into the Dharma. People like meditation, the Chan, but the teaching school gives you these wholesome categories for understanding what your experiences are like to help you on the path of awakening. Ultimately, of course, this is just a bridge, a kind of a raft to get us somewhere. But this is a useful beginning step. So when we see the world, we see it through the words and the vision of awakened beings trying to teach us. So that's a doorway.
Going back to when Jin Chuan Shu started tonight's lecture, and he mentioned about the moisturizing cream. So if you put this, you put this into action, imagine the most expensive moisturizing cream that you have, and it never runs out. Yep.
Yeah.
So you can use as much as you want.
Yeah, you keep using it. Okay, so we
Okay,
have our.
so we'll put the projector screen down now, and we'll continue with the 32 hallmarks. I think we'll do hallmark number 11.
Yeah. So for people who weren't here last week, what we did was, because the lecture before last week, Reverend Heng Sure mentioned the Buddha's body and the hallmarks. Let me get the list.
So because we have some new people here that weren't here last week, I think we'll just quickly run through the first 10 slides again without much explanation, and then we'll continue with slide number 11. So just some background. These hallmarks that the Buddha has, the Buddha has 32 major hallmarks and 80 minor physical hallmarks. These are not signs of beauty, although it is said that when you see the Buddha looks really awesome. These marks are the result of the Buddha's cultivation. And if you look at today's text, you can see that a lot of the hallmarks come as a direct result of the Bodhisattva's conduct. I'll get, Feather, can you get the lights in front? Leave this one on and then get the lights. Okay. Just the back ones. Yeah, just this ones. So what's on the screen right now?
Nothing. It's a blank.
Nothing?
It's emptiness.
Huh?
Emptiness.
First one.
Level and full feet.
Yes. So the first one is level and full feet. If you look at the top right hand corner, you see a number 100. That's in reference to at CDTB we have this ceremony called the 10,000 Buddha Repentance. There's a 3-week long repentance ceremony.
That's really applying moisturizing cream. If you actually bow all day long for 600 some bows every day, what you find is your body becomes very soft and supple. True. And you can see maybe why you develop these kind of generous, soft qualities that the Buddha here in this body can embody. This kind of strength, because when you're bowing, it's very vigorous. You actually have to gain muscle to do it. But it's somehow softens your body, because every time you bow down, you're relaxing. You're contemplating something, the Buddha in front of you. So anyway, so this is one of the practices, was part of the bowing ceremony, is after each 100 bows, because there's a whole of actually about 11,000 bows, that actually we contemplate each of the hallmarks and saying, I vow to realize this hallmark. So that's why it's linked up with the 100. Actually, it's interesting. If you think about it, there's 32 hallmarks plus the 80 characteristics, so that's 112. So there's at least 11,200 bows at least. I think there's something like 11,000 some bows in the 10,000 Buddha's repentance.
Yep. So how you get level and full feet? This means that the Buddha has been firm in his promise to live in accordance with the verbal and realized indications of the Dharma. And also this is strange language. And also his firmness in having safeguarded the three. Okay, I remember. Yeah. This means he has kept the three.
He kept the precepts really well.
He had kept the precepts, and that led to precepts samadhi.
The samadhi and
which
wisdom.
Is concentration, and then that also generated wisdom. So what you get when you have that, level and full feet. Then we move on to number 2, 1,000 spoke wheel on feet.
Yeah, the 1,000 spoke wheel is because he's always greeted and escorted his spiritual teachers and gave a selfless attitude of offering personal service to others. In another list from the Pali Canon, the Lakkhana Sutta, it talks about the Buddha dispelling fear, dispelling living beings' fear. So that's another one. Okay. So the number 3, please.
Number 3 is long and slender fingers. This comes from the Buddha having saved the lives of animals to be slaughtered. Let's go to number 4. Supple and soft hands and feet. Says the skin of a Buddha, no matter how old he is, remains unwrinkled and smooth as that of an infant nursing on his mother's milk. Okay, this
Yeah, he's moisturizing cream.
is just a moisturizing
But his
cream,
moisturizing
yeah.
cream is what? It's actually having given nourishing food and drink to other people.
Yeah, being generous with food and drink, nourishing food
So
and
what we
drink.
do here in Berkeley, a lot of the aunties definitely cook
Yep.
a lot.
Number 5, fine webbing lacing between his fingers and toes. And this webbing is not like skin, it's more like a light between his fingers and toes. And remember Aquaman? Yep, so that's kind of like what he has. And this comes from having practiced the 4 ways that gathers others under one's positive influence. Guess what? We just ran through that today. The 4 ways of gathering living beings in.
Yeah.
Number 6, well set, full and even heels.
Okay, so this one talks about why he gets it is also from not killing. Basically, he saves lives, cherishes life. And so we're going through these really quickly, but the images I think are very nice. It gives you a sense of maybe what to visualize with the Buddha. Oh, he's like that. Okay, number 7 is arched insteps, or sometimes it says his ankles are high. And this comes from the Buddha's commitment to practice beneficial methods. Oh, we went over that today. Dedicated to helping sentient beings and never doing anything that goes against his aspiration to benefit others. So that's how he gets high heels or arched insteps.
Number 8,
Thighs like a royal deer. And so this one, it comes from his actually skillfulness in all the other various arts and crafts. So we didn't go over that in the sutra text, but next week we'll probably go over that text with all the skills that he learns. So by learning those skills, he gets thighs like a royal stag deer. Okay, number 9. Long, graceful hands reaching below the knees. And so what this comes from is that he's able to be generous without the least bit pettiness and being even asked when he's being asked for any wealth. So he just gives unstintingly whenever is asked. And so we'd also talk about that today. So you can see how the gathering and dharmas really connect with the Buddha's appearance, which makes sense actually if you think about it, is that one way that you gather in people is actually how you look. If you look very happy and full and prosperous, then people go, I want to be prosperous too and follow you, right? So number 10, well-concealed male organ. So this one comes from him keeping the pledges of secrecy and having never revealed what was supposed to be held confidentially. Also, it's said that it comes from reuniting family and friends together and not creating schisms. Okay, so those are what we went over last week. So now we have the next set, number 11.
So this means that the height, the English description, I hope the Chinese is a lot better. What the English actually means is that the height of the Buddha is equal to the stretch of his arms. And this comes from, it says, the Buddha never having sent away beggars empty-handed. So he's always generous to people who need something. So as long as you ask the Buddha for something and he's able to give it to you, he will. And it's also a sign that the Buddha is eternally committed to encouraging individuals to provide space for practitioners and to allow teachings to take place. So there are some people who have, say, like in Minnesota, where we don't have a branch monastery, there are people who pull together the resources and they get a building to practice in. And then every few months, they invite the monks from CDTB or the City of 10,000 Buddhas to go over to speak the Dharma for them. So these people, they keep doing that. The height and the stretch of arms will be equal. Yep.
Okay, so number 12. Every hair, you can say hair root or every hair, is imperial blue in color, or is kind of dark colored. And we often see, actually, that's why we often see sometimes the Buddha's pictures are blue hair, which I always thought was, I wonder, that was interesting. And where did this come from?
Not just blue, but sapphire blue.
Sapphire blue, yeah. Sapphire blue in color without any faults. That's how it's described. And so what is this from? It's from having intense loving concern for all beings, which we just talked about, was caring for others, and having rid himself of using weapons. So he doesn't use any weapons. So he uses caring and doesn't use weapons. Okay.
Okay, for the next one, the hair on the body curling upward. So you can see this on the Buddha's hair and also on his body. His hair curls upward. And it comes from his, let me see, number 13. Okay. Because he engaged in constructive practices and having inspired others to do the same. So he does good things, he does beneficial deeds, he does the 4 kinds of gathering in, and he encourages other people to do the same as well. And it's also, so it not just grows upwards, but it curls clockwise as well, with never more than 1 hair growing from each paw. I'm not sure if anyone has 2 hairs growing from 1 paw, but he only every paw has only 1 hair, no 2 or 3 hairs. Okay? This is due to him having rid himself completely of mental wandering. His mind does not stray onto useless thoughts, busy work and bustling confusion. So his mind is always still, is always concentrated in whatever he does, in all the things that he does.
And actually also last week, somebody asked me afterwards, is there something for filiality? Is there a dharma for filiality? Actually, in the other sutra, it talks about that, this is also a response to being filial to our teachers. So he actually lists out the upataya, which is our precept transmitting teacher, and the acharya, which is for monks, the teaching teacher, and then our parents, et cetera, et cetera. And by taking care of them, serving them, actually very interesting, it says, and not just that, you actually allow them to be kings in their own space. Which I thought was actually, that was a very interesting concept. It's like, you don't go in and encroach on their space. You let them, you serve them, you care for them, and let them be the rulers of their own space. Oh, okay, that's an interesting concept. So he says, by doing that, you gain this response of only having 1 hair in 1 pore. So, wow.
Okay, number 14.
Yeah, body of
14.
true gold.
Body the color of true gold. You can see this all around us. Behind us, we have the Buddha. Most Buddhist statues are always in gold, or they have gold leaf. It says his skin is luminous and golden in color from his having offered soft and comfortable seats to others. So every time you have guests in your house, you give them the best seat, the most comfortable seat. You will have the body of true gold.
And also in the other text, it talks about having no anger. So having a pleasant appearance, not having an angry heart. Number 15 is a 10-foot aura encircling the Buddha. So you can see it's kind of a pretty awesome picture. The Buddha's. Some people tell me there's actually auras that they see in the human people, and usually the aura just extends like a little bit off the skin, just kind of this general hue that comes off the person. I guess probably if we had special photography now, you probably can catch people's colors. I believe there was something at one point where people were trying to do that, and different colors had were associated with different kinds of emotions or things. But anyway, so the Buddha has a 10-foot aura, and so it says the Buddha's body, free from all blemish, is surrounded with an aura of light. And this is from having practiced the 10 good deeds without ever feeling that he has done enough. So 10 good deeds is another Buddhist list, if people remember it. So I won't go into it here. But in the future lectures, I'm sure it'll come up again, and we can try to memorize those if you haven't memorized it already.
And you will see the depictions of the 10-foot aura in most statues, like the one behind, although they don't make it as 10 feet for practical reasons. But the Buddha, most oftentimes, always has this halo. Halo, that's good. Halo behind.
And you see that actually in Christianity as well. The angels, so there's a sense that there's a kind of the holiness, there's a light that emanates So for those who have those spiritual eyes, they can see it. I'm sure the Buddha, if you read the sutra discussions, actually his light is like limitless. So this is kind of not just 10 feet, but this is one way of explaining it. But the Buddha limitless light, Amitabha Buddha, his light shines on all worlds and all beings all the time. And the only reason it doesn't shine, always shines actually, is we just don't see it. We just don't have that vision.
Okay, number 16. The Buddha always have soft, smooth skin. And it says his skin is fine and unblemished as purified gold, free from all taints, and results from having accommodated others in need of lodging, and his having always provided excellent housing. And is also a sign, so apart from always smooth and soft, it's also very delicate in the sense that it's fine. So again, give people the best room in your home, accommodate the others in need of lodging. People need a place to stay, especially when it gets cold, and you provide someone with lodging, and you will have soft, smooth skin, no need for moisturizers.
And in the Pali text, what was interesting is it also describes that dust does not stay on the Buddha's body. So basically when dust comes, it just goes right off. So I guess it doesn't need to take too many showers because he's always can be clean. And it also adds another reason for having this skin is because he always went to people for advice. He would go in the past to Brahman, to the to the various teachers and say, did I do this? Is this right or wrong? Is this good or bad? Is this appropriate? And from learning and seeking wisdom like that and learning appropriate, he developed this, I guess, soft and smooth skin.
Teflon skin.
Teflon skin.
No dust can adhere.
Yeah.
Okay, where will we?
17.
17. The 7 places distinctively full. Where is it?
17 is here.
Okay. Yeah. So that shows the back of the shoulders, under the arms, and then the back of the knees. It's rounded and slightly raised. And let me see. And also the back of the neck. He said the reason for this is his having given others not only physical nourishment, but also other outstanding objects for enjoyable use, such as the best quality clothing and so on. So from so far, what we've seen is that the Buddha doesn't always give, it's not always Dharma that he gives. He just gives anything that will make people happy, but in a wholesome manner. So anything that you need, even the best clothing, and if the Buddha is is in a position to give it to you, or the Bodhisattva, he will. So I'm sorry, it's not the Buddha that does this. It was the Buddha's past lives, the Bodhisattva, that does all this. So the rewards are that when he becomes a Buddha, he has a full 32 hallmarks.
Number 18 is well-filled underarms. A little baby Buddha there. I think people recognize that picture, right? When the Buddha became enlightened, or no, not enlightened. When the Buddha was born, he pointed to the sky and pointed to the earth and said, from the heaven above, the earth below, only I am honored, meaning he was unsurpassed, right? And so it's a nice picture. And so here he says the area between a Buddha's collarbone and shoulder is rounded, fleshy, and full, without any hollow depression. This is due to having given others medicine and nourishing foods. So giving. So a lot of giving creates a very wholesome appearance, which makes sense. I think if you just think about this opposite of stinginess, and here we just passed Christmas, with a very example is Ebenezer Scrooge, right? They always pictured him very not so pleasant looking. Only at the end of the movie, usually, like he's learned to be generous, that he kind of has a little bit like a smile and a lightness to him. But before, he's always tightened, counting his money. So the Buddha's not like that. Does not look like Scrooge. So
number 19 is something that some of the men here can identify it. Upper torso like that of a royal lion. So when they see someone they want to impress, especially a lady, they'll fill up the chest with air. But the Buddha has this naturally, and that comes. It says the Buddha's upper torso becomes progressively broader, like that of a lion, from the waist upwards. V-shaped chest. This comes from his never having humiliated. How do you pronounce that?
Humiliated others.
And look down upon others regardless of their status, power, wealth, and so on. So no matter who comes to you, a beggar, someone who's worse off than you, someone who exhibits traits that you don't like, you never look down. The Bodhisattva never look down on this person. It also results from his having never scolded others privately or in front of people, and having never belittled others' beliefs or religious traditions. Everyone get that?
Interfaith. You have the Institute for
Yep.
World Religions here. And we often see Master Hua, one of the legacies was interfaith, was work between religions.
So in other words, he's always respectful of people's beliefs, even if they may not be the same as his. He just respects them. He doesn't say anything to cause them heartache. He just uses kind words. Yep.
We have 5 minutes. Actually, we have a little bit of time, so I'll tell this story because it was actually something that really drew me to the Dharma very early on, which was this principle about how the Buddha really respected other, not the chest, but the respected other beliefs, which was that an encounter with a leader of another or well-respected member of another religion wanted to follow the Buddha, and he told them, "Oh, go think it over, because if you come and follow me, it'll have a big effect on your religion. So you want to think about it." And so then he went back and thought about it and came back. But it just showed the Buddha's care to make sure that what he did also respected other people's beliefs. He also said, if you support the monks, in the Buddhist tradition, also still support the ascetics and cultivators of the other traditions as well. So he wasn't like, just this way and everybody else, don't follow that. He says, okay, we just want to give to all. We want to support all. So that to me was very inspiring, because growing up in the West, sometimes religions are not like that. And oftentimes they're kind of like, only me. Okay, so
Wait, let me finish.
Oh.
Just a bit more that I want to add. So how does the Buddha does this to get that bodybuilder's chest? Says these are the things that he wished that others would always have and would never lose: faith, morality, learning, wisdom. He wanted people to always have justice. That means things to always be fair to them, to have good wealth, to have possessions, to have to have a great family, to have many friends, to have many colleagues, good friends and good colleagues, to be strong, to have good looks. He wanted people to always be good looking and be happy. So he always had this in his mind whenever he met people, just good wishes.
And then number 20, which will finish up our presentation for
No,
today.
we can go 21.
Oh, go 21? Okay, so we have 2 more. 20 was a body erect and upright.
Look at that.
So you can take a look at that. It's Buddha standing there. This is actually, I think, a really important idea, is standing straight. I was a kid growing up, we lean over. So the body of the Buddha is very straight and 7 cubits tall. Okay, a cubit is the distance from the elbow to a fingertip. Elbow to fingertip. Okay. Ordinary people are about 4 cubits tall. The cause of this extra height is his final and total ridding himself of taking any creature's life. So absolutely no killing whatsoever. It says in the Pali tradition, this refers to the sign as his body being straight like that of Brahma. And it also describes the Buddha's, this is the banyan trees next.
No, this is a Bodhi tree.
The body of the Buddha is stately and well proportioned as a full-grown Bodhi tree. This came from him building public gardens and parks for the enjoyment of others, and from having encouraged others to do the same. Maybe it's it's a bit mixed. So in the next one, it's a little bit precursor for the next one, which is the banyan tree. But I wanted just to throw another principle in here as well, which is the idea of a kind of standing straight and good posture. I was actually never really into that growing up. It's kind of, you grow up stooped. But I actually think it's very important. And what I realized is that the way our body is held has a huge influence on our mind. So if somebody's like a little bit, or even yourself, if you're feeling depressed or unhappy, if you just stand up straight and kind of open your chest and kind of breathe deeply, just in a bit of time, your mental state clears up. So your physical posture has a huge effect on our mental state. So I think that's actually a really important principle, because it's sometimes we try to meditate and we get lost into trying to hold our mind something or get lost in our own state. But if we go back to our body and we focus on our posture, it actually can open up our mind rather than trying to analyze something or find a solution with our mind. Okay, anyways.
And it also helps you keep mindful. I remember in our training, as we were trainees and then later novice monks, we were always reminded to maintain a proper posture. And I had the posture of, I had a chicken neck. Anyone knows what a chicken neck is? It's always, the head juts out like a chicken. Yeah, and it took me a really long time because when you meditate, it's important for the posture to be straight. And also it helps keep you mindful. It's something for your mind to stay on. Yeah. And then just now we mentioned the banyan tree. If we go on to slide number 21, can everyone see the banyan tree? Is it large enough? Yep. So it says that the picture really shows it really well. The banyan tree is nicely balanced on both sides, and it's huge and it's full. So this is an idea of how the Buddha's shoulders are. It's full, it's round, and it says you're well connected to his neck, not turkey neck or like chicken neck. And his network of veins is not visible. It's very smooth. And this comes from his having freely given praise and encouragement to others and having acknowledged any action or person worthy of praise. So remember, kind words. Whenever he saw someone that deserved kind words, he would make sure he would give it. Right? In the this one, is this the same? There's a previous one? Okay. And let me see. And he always knew, in another version of the 32 hallmarks, it says that the Buddha the Bodhisattva always knew who deserves what. So he used his wisdom, and he would never go beyond, like how you mentioned just now about flattery. In his kind words, he would never go more than enough. He would give you just the right amount, so you wouldn't be suspicious, and a compliment would be taken as a compliment. Right, Jerry, do you mention flattery, right? Yeah. So it wouldn't come across as flattery.
So that's the 11. That's where 11 for today, because we have another 11 to go next time to finish 32.
Does anyone have any questions about the 32 hallmarks?
Last minute or two. Call it an evening. Okay, so next week we'll finish off the 32 hallmarks so people can see the full 32. I think that's a harder list to memorize. If you have a very good memory, you could try to memorize that, but I say that's more difficult. Just the 4. I'll test on the 4 gathering in dharmas though next week, so 4 is a good way to start. Okay, can we pull the screen up? Okay.
Ellen, are you going to play? Okay.
Just one will be okay. I don't know. But I think yesterday, last week, we started early or too late. So if you could, I think it's, I can see. It's almost.
I have to check, but there might be a hallmark resulting from giving nice music in praise of the Buddha. So.
Okay, so people can make your wish, the dedication of merit. Now is the time. It's on the back of your sheet for those who are new. radiant with light. Share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may their minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, if we can all stand up. Oh yeah, any announcements that's happening for this next week? This is Saturday. We have our classes will resume again on January 27th for the DRBU classes, but otherwise the monastery, we have events on Wednesday and Thursday evening.
We have a new class starting every Monday with dark powers. That starts on
January 27th.
January 27, and that class is geared specially for people who want, for say newcomers to the Dharma, who want to learn in a more modern fashion. So instead of like today, where we are guided by the sutra, the class will still be based on text, but it won't be like a sutra lecture. And we invite everyone who's interested to come on Monday nights. It will begin at 7:30 to try it out. Yeah. And if you can't join us, there'll be an online thing as well, so you can join us online.
Yeah, so the idea of that class is actually to take more, I would say, topics that really speak to young people and the issues that are coming up, and then bring the wisdom of the sutras and the Dharma to those topics. So people have young people they know of who might be inspired by the Dharma. That's definitely the place to go. It's Monday night, 7:30.
And the aim of that Monday night is to make it a bit more fun and engaging, especially for young people, so that it's a lot easier to take in. So it won't be boring like us. It'll be more fun. Yeah.
Okay, so let's bow to the Buddhas. Oh, yes.
Yes, Jerry.
That's the third Sunday. Is it the third Sunday? Is it this Sunday? Oh, they updated? This starts January, right? Yeah, so the third Sunday, which is not this Sunday, but the following Sunday, they will, not tomorrow, but the next week, they'll be the nuns, Aloka Vihara. They'll be coming to do a tea time and then share the Dharma. So people would like to meet Theravada nuns. They're starting out here in America, in the West.
You can come for tea. I think that starts at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, I'm not sure, 5:30 or 5 o'clock. Look at the website, it has it there. Yeah.
Yes, Alan? Do we know who's coming on next Saturday? I'm sorry to say it's going to be the two of us again.
Yeah. So we're going to finish the hallmarks for the 3 weeks during the Chan session. And then after that, what we'll have is a fanfasher and potentially some monks. And the nuns will also come. So we'll have it taking turns to speak. So, okay. So please get up slowly so your legs have blood. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master.